Hello, welcome to this OMG revision video. Today we're going to be looking at paper 3 core vocabulary, focusing on geographical applications, which is the skills and fieldwork section of paper 3 knowledge. So grab yourself one of the worksheets from one of your geography teachers or grab a copy off Teams so that you can have a go at defining all of this core vocabulary before you watch the rest of the video. Then once you have had a go, you can then use a green pen or a different pen to fill in your answers for the video. So let's make a start. A geographical inquiry. This word or phrase is studying geography with an active participation of the learner. You have carried out a geographical inquiry at Cardamel Valley because you actively participated in the introduction, planning, methods, data presentation, data analysis, conclusion, and evaluation of your own inquiry at Cardamel Valley. An inquiry question is a really complex and open-ended question that we in essence are answering with our fieldwork. So an example of an inquiry question that you'll be familiar with is how's the river channel cross profile of Cardamel Valley River change over distance. Then a hypothesis, that's a proposed explanation on the basis of limited evidence. So the limited evidence that we had going to Cardamel Valley. I like to think of a hypothesis as a prediction, whereas an inquiry question is just that, it's a question. So with a hypothesis, a key difference is we are predicting exactly what the outcome of our inquiry will be. So an example here, environmental impacts of tourism decrease with increasing distance from the Cardamel Valley Visitor Centre. So this hypothesis is predicting that the further away you get from the toilets and the restaurant and the shop at Cardamel Valley, the less impact of tourism there'll be, the less litter, the less noise pollution. Theory and concepts. So theories and concepts are ideas that are supported by significant evidence. So this is the kind of knowledge and theory that you'd find in a textbook because there is years of knowledge and evidence for it. So for example, we use the Bradshaw model, which uses evidence to say that the channel width increases as you go downstream. So it starts off really narrow and gets wider downstream. Primary evidence. This is known as first-hand evidence in history that you have collected yourself. So our river measurements at Cardamel Valley and our environmental quality survey, they are primary evidence because we went and collected those ourselves. Whereas secondary evidence is reproduced from an original document. So if we were to, for example, use photos from Google Maps to decide if the width of the river at Cardamel Valley changed, or to use data from the Environment Agency that was already produced on the document, and then reproduce that as part of our inquiry, that would be secondary evidence, basically collected by other people. Risk assessments, this is a process that we as teachers, but also you did in class. Process of identifying potential hazards. I think hazard means dangers that could cause harm and taking steps to minimize, or sometimes the exam uses the term mitigate the harm. So for example, the risk, we're walking on steep muddy slopes, there is a risk of falling. How would we mitigate or manage that risk? Wear walking boots or sturdy footwear. Recording data, also known as data collection. So the skill of documenting data at a later date. So a good example here, we use a simple table to record 10 measurements of river width and depth. Sampling methods. So this is the method, or sampling methods are the methods we use to choose what data we collect and how we collect it. There are different sampling strategies. However, we use systematic sampling. So I think of that as we came up with a system to decide the points we were going to measure. We did it in an ordered and regular way. So we got the river width, we divide it by 10, and then we measured at every 10th. We could have just randomly measured the river width. That would have been random sampling. But we did systematic sampling. We came up with a system of measuring at regular intervals. Data presentation. That's how we show the information that we've just sampled and recorded. One of the methods that we used is a cross profile, but lots of different methods, bar charts, divided bar charts, pie charts, line graphs, scatter graphs, you name them. As long as they are showing you the data in usually a really visual way, we call that data presentation. Visual data. So visual data is what we can see, where we can include graphs, infographics, and animations. So it's usually a combination of data presentation methods, also with some pictures, or sometimes it is located on a graph. So here we have our 3 cross profiles for Cardamel Valley, site 1 in the upper course and site 3 further down stream. but they have been located onto a map of the Longmynd or Cardamil Valley. So we can see exactly the river at this point, site 1, looks like that, whereas the river at site 3, the cross profile, looks at that. So it's been located, it's been made really visual. Whereas graphical data is a representation of data using plots of data, graphs and charts. Most commonly we use bar charts, but we can also use scatter graphs or pie charts. Cartographic data, carto, that kind of prefix just means maps. So anything cartographer, cartographic is anything to do with maps. So cartographic, the science of using maps, that can include maps, sketch maps, but also photographs or GIS as well. Okay, statistical techniques. These are used to find relationships between two sets of data, for example, a mean. The ones that we usually use are measures of central tendency, so mean, mode, median. But we also use range and interquartile range in geography as well. Anomalies, something that deviates from the standard or the expected or the pattern, the odd one out. So in this example, we've got Cardamil Valley, and we know that the river gets wider as we go downstream. What this is actually showing though is that upstream it's wider than site 3. So we look at that data and we think, hang on, that's an anomaly because it doesn't necessarily fit our hypothesis or our prediction. A conclusion, the end or finish of a process. In terms of our fieldwork inquiry, the conclusion is what we found or the answer to the question. So what did we find? Our conclusion was that in fact the river does get wider as we go downstream. But the rest of the kind of words that are coming up is how we know that conclusion can be trusted or is valid. So evaluation, this is the process that we're going to do or have been doing the whole process or at every stage of the process in our fieldwork, and it's similar to our assessment. So we find out what went well, but also considering what needs to be improved. And in your exam, the majority of the questions that aren't skills focused are going to be you evaluating different parts of your method, whether that's things that went well with your data collection or things that kind of could have gone a little bit better with your data presentation. So the limitations of data collection. Think about that word limit. It's kind of like a restriction. What's holding your data collection back? What could be better about it? What's not very good about it? So in terms of data collection, one example, we had a limited amount of time. So that meant that limited our sample size. We only had about 3 hours. There's only a certain amount of times you can measure the river in 3 hours. If we had more time, we'd have collected more samples. We would have had a more representative sample of the whole Longmynd. Other limitations could be the accuracy of the equipment we were using. So we simply used a tape measure that might have been bent from years of use. That would be an error, equipment error, or it might have been used improperly. That would be human error. Various things can influence or limit our data collection. Reliability means good in quality of performance. If your methods had few problems, they're reliable and will produce accurate results. So as long as our methods are, there's fewer problems with them, that's going to make our results and our conclusions more reliable. But every time you have something about your method that perhaps could have been improved, that reduces the reliability of your methods. Accuracy of results is linked to precision, or how close they are to the true value, the true river width or the true river depth. Again, if your methods are reliable, it means your results will be accurate. And accurate results mean that your conclusions will be valid. So if we get asked about how valid our conclusion is, which is a common question they like to ask in the exam, how did you know that you had a valid conclusion? We need to think, what did we do to make sure we had accurate results, or what could we have done even better to make the accuracy of our results better? And finally, the validity of conclusion. This is to link to trustworthiness, and ultimately the validity of your conclusion rests on every single part of your fieldwork. So without really robust methods, with few limitations, without accurate results, then we can't make valid or trustworthy conclusions. So remember that everything that goes in before, the methods, the results, so long as those are accurate and reliable, that means we can make valid or trustworthy conclusions. So those are all the words you're going to need for the paper 3 exam, and a few tips in how they might come up in the exam. So make sure you go through, pause the video as you need, write in your definitions, check the ones that you don't know, come back in 2 weeks' time and have another go.